Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, well, here we are. Guess what, you guys? It's going to be 70 degrees today here in northern Vermont. I've had the heat on every single day this week because it has not been warm. It's going to be warm today. I have high hopes. High hopes for today and tomorrow. All right, so how are you guys? What's going on? Where are we hailing from this morning? Welcome to the Unbreakable Wisdom Show if you are not a weekly watcher. Um, yeah, so okay, here we are. It's May 16th. I can't believe it. This has been the weirdest first half of the year. Anybody else was expecting I don't know what I was expecting, but it seems like it has not been as I expected, which is interesting. So this morning, I thought I would talk about, what happens when you want to change your way of being, right? Like we all have, I feel like different identities, right? As we go forward in life, I'm going to be 58 this year, so it's like, you are a certain version of yourself in, the first, let's say, 20 years, and then you sort of elevate hopefully, and you're a different version, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and so on. And I think what happens to people is when you choose that new identity, when you decide to be a different version of yourself, and this is true too, like if you have a business and you're going to change what you're doing or what you're focusing on, and you decide on something new, and then you have to create a different version of that, a different version of yourself, a different version of the business. um, I think that it requires a certain level of discipline, right? Because you have to decide what is going to change, and then you have to be committed to the new thing while you're still sort of stuck in the old way of being. So you have to actively transform yourself, your business, whatever. And then you have to say no to anything that isn't that. And that's where it gets hard, right? Because we're like this version of ourselves, and we have our eye on an elevation or being a different version or being a different, choosing a different identity for ourselves. And what I mean by that is during your life, you don't get stuck and caught up with the same stuff, right? Hopefully, you're doing personal growth work, you're elevating, you're moving forward, you're becoming a different version of yourself, and you're growing. And so when you get to that different version, what worked down here no longer works for you, right? It's not the same thing. It no longer works. So you have to actively transform your self. You have to work to actively transform the way that things are working, what you're choosing, what you're saying yes to, what you're saying no to. And that's where it gets difficult, because you're this old version and now you want to be this new version, and then there were certain characteristics and behaviors that were acceptable and now they're not acceptable, so now you have to say no to anything that isn't where you're going, right? You have to say no to anything that isn't where you want to get to and where you want to be. And I think that's where we get stuck in the old stories, because as we elevate, those old stories and old narratives want to draw us backward. Those things like, you can't do it, you're not worth it, you'll never achieve that, you'll never get to where you want to go, you know, um, you're not good enough, all those kinds of conversations. And when we decide that we're going to be a different version of ourselves, or we decide that we're going to create something different. Hi, Missy. We have to start moving forward, and we have to say no to anything that isn't that. And that's where it gets difficult, because sometimes that means releasing stuff. Sometimes it means releasing relationships or collaborations or pricing or uh, clubs, people that we hung out with. We have to really evaluate, where we're going, what works, what doesn't work, say no to anything that isn't that, and then not be afraid to release whatever isn't working anymore. And that can be really hard because a lot of times we become attached and comfortable in our old ways of being and in our old ruts and relationships and collaborations and all the things. We're comfortable there. We're not really elevating anymore. It's not really like people aren't really bringing anything to the table. We're the ones giving and doing and pouring out. Nothing's really coming back, but we're comfortable there. We know how to navigate. And when we shift into a new identity or a new version of our business or a new career, a new job, something new and different, when we make that shift, we have to, you can't drag all the past crap with you, right? You have to let go of stuff. You have to let go of old stuff that isn't working anymore, including the clutter around you or the things around you, like old clothes, makeup, shoes, pocketbooks, papers, anything that isn't going to forward the action of the new identity of where you're going. You got to get rid of that. And that requires discipline that is difficult, I feel like, because you are used to what you're used to, right? And when you change something, it's uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. And sometimes when we change something, we feel like we failed at whatever we're letting go of, right? And I talked about this in a post that I made, I think on Instagram or something. I did a short video, maybe on the main Facebook page. And I said, like, when did we, who told us what failure means? Like, who identified failure for us and gave it a definition? And why did we accept someone else's definition? Because in truth, you have to hold failure with success. You have to hold them together because you don't get one without the other. You're not going to get you're not going to figure out what succeeds until you figure out what doesn't. And some people label that, failure as bad. Scientists label it as a good thing, right? Even behavioral scientists, if you're investigating something and you're trying to figure something out, you're going to try a lot of different avenues and a lot of different ways that don't work. You'll try a lot of things that don't work before you find out what does work. So holding failure as bad and wrong and awful and yucky, that really just inhibits your ability to transform the learning opportunity, to like take the data and do something with it and move forward on that, right? Because if you're busy feeling shameful and bad and wrong because you failed, then you're not learning anything. You're not actively engaged in the inquiry of, okay, how come that didn't work? What happened? Why didn't that go forward? How come that isn't doing what I wanted it to do? Why is that? So when you're shifting from one way of being into the next version of yourself and you truly want to elevate yourself, everything that you figure out in that process, right? Like, oh, this is no longer working for me. Oh, when I talk to this person, I feel yucky. I feel sick to my stomach. It doesn't feel good to me. Oh, when this person is telling me this thing about my business or my life, it feels awful. Okay, that's probably not a person you should be engaging with any longer, right? It's time for you to move past that. So that doesn't mean that you failed at that relationship. It means you outgrew it. It means it no longer fits. It means it's no longer serving you. It means it's no longer working. Those are all healthy and good things to recognize. What becomes unhealthy and yucky is when we hang on to things that are no longer serving us, but we're hanging on to them because they're comfortable and we're afraid to let go. And, Melissa and I last week talked about courage, right? We talked about how I say courage is a verb and you have to practice it. It's like a muscle. You practice it and it gets stronger. It takes courage to look at your life and decide, I want to elevate myself. I want things to be different. I want to have a new version of my business. I want to change my pricing. I want to get a new job. I want to get a new relationship. The one I'm in isn't working, or maybe the marriage I'm in isn't working, or maybe the business relationship or partnership I'm in isn't working. And maybe it is working, but it needs some shifts. Maybe people in there have to grow. And so there is, some pushing required, right? To get people to move, to grow, to elevate. Look, if you're not actively failing, you're not actively growing, because how else are you gonna, if we just had incredible success all the time, we wouldn't learn anything, and we wouldn't try anything new, because you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So if it was working and it seems stellar, why would you do anything different? It's only with those bumps and, you know, rocky places in the road, right? Where it's like, oh shit, that's not working the way I wanted it to. Or that I threw out an offer and that didn't work. Or I took this job and I'm in it for a year now and I'm not really happy. I notice I'm waking up anxious, like it's not really working for me. Like all the different things that can happen, right? To show you that you're kind of stagnating, or where you are isn't feeling good, or it's not working really well. And what you want to do is recognize what isn't working, release, loose it, let it go, and don't make it wrong and don't make yourself wrong. That's the big thing, right? When you're going from here, when you're here and you want to go there and you have to walk this road and you have to like release and loose and let go, and you have to encounter, failures and learn things and all the stuff. The most important thing is to have grace for yourself and not make yourself wrong in that process, because there's no way to get from here to there without, turmoil and fear and anxiety and all the things. But it doesn't mean they have to own you. It means it's part of the process. It means it's when you take on a new version of yourself, you have to let go of the old version of yourself. And you have to be willing to release it, loose it, let it go, and let that be okay. I feel like we all, you know, when you have to have a new identity for yourself, when you determine that you want a new identity for yourself, and I don't mean obviously like a legal identity. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you decided that you want to grow and be some other person than you are now, some braver, more bold, more uh self-worthy version of yourself, right? I don't even know if that's a word, or what I like when you want to. I need more coffee. When you decide that you've had enough of settling for less, okay, this is a better way to say it. When you decide that you've had enough of settling for less and you want to go chase incredible things for yourself, that's a new identity that you're choosing. You're choosing like this brave, bold, badass version of you. And so in that choosing, there's going to be a lot of things that happen, right? There's going to be a lot of work that you got to do. And you can't be afraid of that work. And the biggest thing in there is you have to learn how to say no to anything that isn't that isn't where you're going. So we'll use a business as an example because it's an easy way to see it. When a business decides that they're going to elevate themselves or they're going to change the way in which they work, let's say they decide to change their pricing and elevate their offerings, and they want to elevate the type of clients that they're attracting, right? And so they make those decisions, they create that new pricing, they create those new offers, and so that's there. Now they have clients that were operating in the old way of working with them. They have clients that are used to paying lower prices and maybe they're not up to the caliber of this way of working. So we have to be willing to release those clients and let that revenue go in order to get here, because we as the company we can't hold both things, right? If we saw that we are have outgrown the way that we are working and we want to move into this arena, we have to be willing to let go of anything that isn't that. And so there's this place where you have to stand, where you've got to stand in your intention for where you're going, and you have to release this over here. And so then you're standing right here and it doesn't yet look like it's working, right? We call that the messy middle. And you've got to be able to stand there and stand there and stand there and take the actions to go here and say no to anything that isn't that. Stand here, declare that you're going there, start taking the steps to get there, and don't get hooked in by this. Don't go into panic mode saying, "Oh my God, I have to go back and look for that old type of client because it's not working, right? I'm not getting what I want. It's not changing fast and all the things." You have to be willing to put a stake in the ground for what you want. You have to be willing to declare how you want it to work. You have to be willing to declare your future. You have to be willing to declare the future that you want for yourself. You have to be willing to stand in it, declaring it, taking action toward it while it hasn't yet materialized in your field of vision. And you have to be willing to say no to anything that isn't that and release, loose, and let go anything that isn't that. And that is where people get stuck. That is where it gets difficult. Because in this moment here, people start to panic when it doesn't turn fast enough. And then they lose the consistency and the discipline that they set up for themselves to get there. So they stand here, doesn't look like it's working. They start doubting themselves. They start going down the rabbit hole, and then it gets lost, right? Because all the forward progress that you made, unless you can hold the line right here and keep doing the thing and saying the thing and doing the thing and saying the thing and doing the thing and saying the thing, only after you are wretchedly sick of doing the thing and saying the thing does it turn. And then when it turns, you have to continue doing the thing and saying the thing to create yourself the momentum that you require to get all the way to where you want to go. So people lose it in the middle. I talk about this a lot because I see it in almost every single client that I have or every single company that I've worked with. They want to change, they commit to the change, they know the actions they have to take to orchestrate the change. They start all that work. It doesn't go fast enough. It's not moving the way they thought. It doesn't look the way they thought it should. And they let go. They let go of the discipline and the consistency. And then it doesn't work. So I'm trying to think of how to bring all this together for you because I feel like I've been a little all over the place this morning with this conversation. I'm seeing this in a lot of the work that I'm doing right now. I'm seeing like people wanting to move from the version of themselves that they've been into the version of themselves that they want to be, right? I'm seeing a lot of that. And so I'm helping to navigate them through the transformation, which is what I'm trying to language to you guys this morning. I'm trying to explain to you what happens in the middle of that. You know, you are a particular way or your business is a particular way and you want to make a change, you want to grow, you want to go forward, you want to get to another place. You want higher revenue, you want a different job, you want a different relationship, you want a better career, whatever it is. So we're here, we want to go there. Then we end up here. And this is where we really have to be consistent and disciplined, willing to let go of whatever doesn't serve the future version that we're after, right? To be willing to loose and let go anything that isn't that. And then you have to be willing to be consistent, disciplined, and courageous in taking the actions that are going to get you to where you want to go. You need to take those actions consistently, sometimes daily, definitely weekly. There needs to be a certain set of things that you're doing to get yourself to where you're going, right? and you got to keep doing it until it turns. And you got to have the courage to stay in it, and you have to have the courage to say no to anything that isn't that. So this is we're coming up, end of June will be the end of the second quarter of the year. So we're about to hit the midpoint of the year. So if you guys are not where you want to be, if you have not achieved the things that you wanted to achieve in the first 5 months of the year, I highly recommend doing a little recalibration work for yourself and really thinking about where you want to go, where you are now, what you want to see created in the next months before we hit the end of the year, and what you're willing to do about it. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to shift? Where are you willing to be disciplined and consistent that you haven't been? That's the real question, because nobody can solve your stuff except for you. You know, there's a bunch of us out there that can certainly give you some good counsel and excellent tools, but at the end of the day, it's going to be you that makes the choice. All right. I feel like that was the end of my conversation for this morning. Doesn't seem to be a ton of traction this morning. I don't know if people think I'm not live, but that's okay. Usually, you guys, a lot of you watch the show later. So I'm going to plant flowers and enjoy the weather in Vermont, which is going to be nice for the next 2 days. And I hope you guys have a great week. And I will see you next Saturday. Okay. Take care.